The medical bay of the refugee station hummed with the quiet efficiency of alien technology, but nothing could mask the trembling that seized Zextai's forearms whenever he tried to speak. The Kytherian's normally vibrant blue skin had faded to an ashen gray, and his large compound eyes darted constantly toward the exits, as if expecting death to walk through them at any moment. Dr. Helena Vasquez had seen trauma before in her 20 years as a xenopsychologist, but nothing quite like this. The survivor had been found drifting in a damaged escape pod 3 days ago, babbling incoherently about humans and begging for protection from something the universal translators couldn't properly decode. "Take your time," Helena said softly, her voice carefully modulated to avoid startling him. "You're safe here." Zextai's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme distress in his species. Safe? There is no safe when they hunt. The humans, they are not what the galaxy believes them to be. Helena leaned forward slightly. Humans had only made first contact 18 months ago, and their reputation in galactic society was that of a peaceful, if technologically primitive, species relegated to the outer rim territories. "What do you mean?" The Kytherian's eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "I was aboard the Eternal Prosperity, a vegan merchant vessel. We had a crew of 47 beings from 12 different worlds. We thought ourselves untouchable. The ship was 3 kilometers long, armed with plasma cannons that could crack moons, and protected by shields that had never failed in 2 centuries of service." His voice dropped to a whisper that the medical bay's sensitive equipment barely picked up. "We were returning from the Centauri trade runs when our sensors detected a single small craft following us, no bigger than a fighter shuttle. Our captain, Veldar the Wise, laughed when the communications array translated its message." Zextai paused, his breathing becoming rapid and shallow. Helena waited, recognizing the signs of someone reliving a traumatic memory. "The message was simple," he continued. "This is Commander Sarah Chun of the Terran Defense Force. Your vessel has been identified as carrying stolen human artifacts and 3 human prisoners. Surrender immediately or face the consequences." Helena frowned. "Human artifacts? But humans have barely been spacefaring for 50 years. 12 plasma cannons, 6 particle beam arrays, and a full spread of quantum torpedoes. Enough firepower to level a city. But when the energy barrage cleared..." He stopped, his entire body shaking violently. Helena reached for the sedative injector, but Zextai held up a trembling hand to stop her. The human ship was untouched, not even a scorch mark. And then it spoke again. The voice was different this time, colder. "You have made your choice. Prepare to face humanity's judgment." When it hit our hull, the metal began to sing, a harmonic frequency that resonated with the ship's superstructure. Our engineering chief recognized it immediately. Sympathetic vibration. The humans had somehow analyzed our hull composition and generated the exact frequency needed to tear the ship apart from the inside. Zextai's mandibles clicked rapidly as he continued. But Captain Veldar was a veteran of the Spiral Wars. He ordered emergency maneuvers and activated our most powerful defensive measures. Most spacefaring species could barely tolerate 5 gravities, and even the hardy Krillians maxed out at 15. "It struck our starboard weapons array," Zextai continued. "But instead of causing an explosion, it seemed to merge with our ship's hull. Within minutes, our weapons began turning on our own defensive systems. The humans had somehow infiltrated our computer networks and were using our own firepower against us." The Kytherian's eyes took on a haunted look. That's when Captain Veldar made the call that doomed us all. He opened communications with nearby hegemony patrol vessels and requested immediate assistance. 3 heavy cruisers responded, each one carrying enough firepower to glass a planet. Helena felt a chill run down her spine. The hegemony was one of the galaxy's major powers, and their military was known for its ruthless efficiency. "The human acknowledged the incoming reinforcements," Zextai said. Commander Chin's voice came over our communications array one more time. "You have involved others in your crimes. The debt has now grown beyond your ability to pay." The medical bay's environmental systems kicked in, adjusting the temperature as Helena realized she had been holding her breath. "What happened when the hegemony ships arrived?" Zextai's compound eyes seemed to focus on something far beyond the walls of the medical bay. The three cruisers dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, weapons already charging. Admiral Theclon himself was in command of the lead vessel. He hailed the human craft and demanded its immediate surrender. The Kytherian paused, his breathing becoming labored again. Commander Chin's response was immediate and terrifying in its simplicity. "Admiral, you have 10 seconds to withdraw your vessels before I classify them as hostile. Interfering with a Terran Defense Force operation is considered an act of war." Helena made more notes, trying to process the implications. A single human challenging 3 hegemony cruisers was either insanity or confidence backed by capabilities far beyond anything in the official First Contact files. Admiral Theclon laughed. Zextai said, "I heard it through our communications array." He ordered all 3 ships to fire simultaneously. The combined barrage should have reduced anything in the target zone to its component atoms. The Kytherian's 4 arms wrapped around himself protectively. But the human ship wasn't there when the weapons fired. Our sensors detected it behind the hegemony formation, having somehow moved faster than our instruments could track. And then we learned what human technology was truly capable of. Helena noticed that other medical staff had quietly gathered around them, drawn by the increasingly incredible testimony. "The human craft fired something," Zextai whispered. "Not at the ships themselves, but at the space between them." Reality seemed to tear open, and through the rift stepped warriors that defied every law of physics I thought I knew. The medical bay fell silent except for the steady rhythm of Zextai's labored breathing. "They wore armor that gleamed like liquid starlight," he continued. "But they moved through the vacuum of space as if it were atmosphere. No environmental suits, no apparent life support. They carried weapons I couldn't identify, devices that seemed to bend light around them." Helena's stylus froze over her tablet. "How is that possible?" "I don't know," Zextai said, his voice breaking. "But I watched through our external cameras as these human warriors boarded the hegemony cruisers. They didn't use cutting tools or breach charges. They simply walked through the hulls as if the metal wasn't there." The Kytherian's account was becoming increasingly difficult to believe, but his obvious terror suggested he believed every word he was saying. Within minutes, all 3 hegemony vessels went dark, Zextai continued. No explosions, no signs of battle damage. They just stopped. Their engines shut down, their weapons powered off, and their communications went silent. Helena found herself struggling to maintain professional objectivity. And then what happened? Zextai's mandibles clicked in what she recognized as the Kytherian equivalent of sobbing. "Commander Chin contacted our ship one final time. She gave us coordinates for a neutral station and told us we had exactly 1 hour to deliver the human prisoners and return the stolen artifacts to those coordinates." The Kytherian looked directly at Helena with eyes that seemed to hold galaxies of pain. "We thought about running. Captain Veldar considered jumping to hyperspace and fleeing to the outer rim. But then our sensors detected them." "Detected what?" "More human ships," Zextai whispered. "Dozens of them, appearing from nowhere. They surrounded us completely, and each one was larger than the craft that had disabled 3 hegemony cruisers. We were trapped in a sphere of human vessels that our sensors insisted weren't there until they chose to be seen. The medical bay's lights dimmed automatically as the station's day cycle progressed, but nobody moved to adjust them. We complied, Zextai said simply. What choice did we have? We delivered the prisoners and the artifacts to the coordinates Commander Chun had specified. 3 humans, barely more than younglings by their appearance, who had been captured during a raid on a remote research station. Helena made a note to check the Galactic incident databases for any reports of human research facilities being attacked. But that wasn't the end, Zextai continued, his voice growing stronger as he reached the climax of his account. As we prepared to leave, one of the rescued humans spoke to Captain Veldar directly. The Kytherian's compound eyes fixed on Helena with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. The human was young, maybe 20 cycles by their reckoning. But when she spoke, her words carried the weight of absolute authority. Helena waited, sensing that this was the crucial part of Zextai's testimony. She said, "Tell the galaxy what you have seen here today." Tell them that humanity remembers every crime, every act of aggression, every stolen life. We are not the primitive species you believe us to be. We are the children of Earth, and we have returned to reclaim what was taken from us." The medical bay fell completely silent as the implications of those words settled over everyone present. Zextai's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "As our ship limped away from that system, our long-range sensors detected something that will haunt me until my dying day. The 3 hegemony cruisers that had been disabled, they were moving again. But they weren't flying back to hegemony space." Helena felt her blood turn cold. Where were they going? "They were following the human fleet," Zextai said, his entire body shaking with remembered terror. Dozens of vessels moving in perfect formation toward the galactic core, toward the heart of civilized space. And leading them was that small craft with Commander Sarachan aboard. The Kytherian looked around the medical bay as if seeing it for the first time. "That was 6 days ago. Since then, our communications with the inner systems have gone silent one by one. Something is happening out there, something that will change everything we thought we knew about humanity and our place in this galaxy." Helena set down her tablet, her mind reeling from the implications of Zextai's account. If even half of what he described was true, then humanity's entry into galactic civilization was not the peaceful first contact event it had appeared to be. "Doctor," Zextai said, reaching out with one trembling arm to grasp her hand. "You must understand. What I saw that day, it was not an isolated incident. It was a message. Humanity is coming, and they bring with them technologies and capabilities that make our greatest achievements look like children's toys." The Kytherian's grip tightened with surprising strength. "But most terrifying of all is what that young human said as we departed. This galaxy was ours long before any of you reached for the stars. We are not invaders. We are coming home." The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 12 hours after Dr. Vasquez transmitted Zextai's testimony to the Central Authority. Representatives from 47 member species packed the Great Chamber on Nexus Prime, their voices creating a cacophony of fear, disbelief, and mounting panic. Chancellor Vorth AK of the Andromedans called for order, his massive frame casting shadows across the speaker's platform. "We have all reviewed the testimony of the Kytherian survivor. Before we proceed, I want to hear from Intelligence Director Quintel regarding the status of our Outer Rim monitoring stations." The crystalline being that served as the galaxy's chief intelligence officer rose from her designated spot, her faceted form refracting the chamber's lights into prismatic patterns. "The situation is worse than the survivor's account suggests," she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. A ripple of concerned murmurs swept through the assembled delegates. "In the past 72 hours, Quintel continued, we have lost contact with 17 monitoring stations, 6 trade outposts, and 3 hegemony patrol bases. The pattern of communication failures suggests a coordinated advance toward the galactic core." Ambassador Rexthal of the Vegan Confederacy stood abruptly. "Are you suggesting that a single human vessel is responsible for all these losses?" "Not a single vessel," Quintel replied grimly. "Our deep space sensors have detected what can only be described as a fleet movement on a scale we have never encountered. Preliminary estimates suggest anywhere from 200 to 500 human ships advancing on multiple vectors." The chamber erupted into chaos. Species representatives began shouting in their native languages, universal translators struggling to keep pace with the rapid-fire exchanges of fear and accusation. Chancellor Vorth AK activated the chamber's sonic dampening field, instantly reducing the noise to manageable levels. "Director Quintel, what do we know about human military capabilities based on this new intelligence?" The crystalline being's form shifted subtly, indicating deep thought. "Based on sensor analysis of the encounters we've managed to reconstruct, human technology operates on principles we don't understand. Their ships appear to utilize some form of space-folding drive that allows them to appear and disappear without the energy signatures we associate with hyperspace jumps." She paused, her faceted surface flickering with internal light. "More concerning is their apparent ability to interface directly with other species' computer systems. The hegemony vessels that went dark showed no signs of physical damage, suggesting the humans can take control of enemy ships without firing a shot. Ambassador Keltar of the Spiral Federation, a moth-like being with gossamer wings, fluttered nervously. What about the reports of human warriors moving through vacuum without environmental protection? Surely that's impossible. Under normal circumstances, yes, Quintel agreed. But we're dealing with technology that seems to violate several fundamental laws of physics. Our scientists are working around the clock to understand how humans have achieved capabilities that our greatest minds deemed impossible. From his position in the Terran Observation Gallery, Ambassador David Chun watched the proceedings with growing unease. He had been assigned to represent humanity's interests at the Galactic Council 6 months ago, but his briefings had contained nothing about advanced military capabilities or missing human prisoners. Chancellor Vorthake's attention turned to the human representative. Ambassador Chun, perhaps you could shed some light on these developments? The galaxy deserves an explanation for your species' apparent deception regarding your technological capabilities. David stood slowly, acutely aware that every eye in the chamber was focused on him. Honored Chancellor, I am as surprised by these reports as anyone in this chamber. The human government I represent has no knowledge of the advanced vessels or capabilities described in the survivors' testimony. A wave of skeptical chittering arose from the assembled delegates. However, David continued, raising his voice to be heard over the murmuring. I have requested emergency communication with Earth to seek clarification on these matters. I should have a response within the next few hours. Ambassador Zephyra of the Centauri Alliance, her serpentine form coiling with agitation, spoke from her delegation's area. Ambassador Chun, how do you explain the survivors' claim that the rescued humans spoke of humanity returning home and reclaiming what was taken from them? David felt his stomach clench. The implication was clear, that humanity had somehow been in the galaxy long before official first contact. But that contradicted everything he knew about human history. I cannot explain statements I have not heard in their original context, he replied carefully. But I can assure this council that the human government has been completely transparent about our space exploration history. Before anyone could respond, the chamber's emergency alert system activated. A holographic display materialized above the speaker's platform, showing a real-time star map of the local galactic region. Director Quintel's form blazed with sudden brilliant light. We're receiving emergency transmissions from the Kepler station at the edge of Council space. The display zoomed in on a section of the outer rim where Kepler station served as a major trade hub for dozens of species. The station's icon was flashing red, indicating a priority distress signal. Patch the transmission through, Chancellor Vorthake ordered. The chamber's communication array crackled to life, filled with static and interference. Through the noise came a panicked voice speaking in Standard Galactic. This is Commander Velsho of Kepler Station. We are under some kind of attack. The attackers, they're human, but not like any humans we've encountered. Their ships are massive, each one the size of a city. They appeared without warning and are demanding. The transmission cut to static, then cleared suddenly. They're demanding the immediate release of all human artifacts in our museums and archives. They claim these items were stolen from something called the First Expansion. We don't know what they're talking about. They've given us 1 hour to comply, or they will take what they consider theirs by force. Chancellor Vorthake looked grimly at Ambassador Chun. Ambassador, does the term First Expansion mean anything to you? David shook his head, but even as he did, fragments of half-remembered archaeological reports began surfacing in his mind. Ancient ruins found on several worlds, bearing writing that resembled early human scripts, but predating human space travel by thousands of years. I need to contact Earth immediately, he said. You'll get your chance, the Chancellor replied. But first, let's hear the rest of Commander Velsho's report. The transmission resumed, but now the background noise included what sounded like alarms and shouting. They've launched some kind of boarding craft. But these aren't normal shuttles. They're phasing through our shields and hull plating as if they weren't there. Our security teams are reporting intruders in the artifact storage levels, but their weapons aren't affecting them. It's like the humans are protected by some kind of energy field. A new voice cut into the transmission, calm and authoritative despite the chaos. This is Admiral Marcus Webb of the Terran Reclamation Fleet. Kepler Station Command. You are in violation of the Galactic Heritage Accords by possessing stolen human cultural artifacts. These items were taken from human colonies during the Great Silence and must be returned to their rightful owners. Commander Velshow's voice returned, strained and confused. Admiral, we have no record of any Galactic Heritage Accords. Our artifact collections were acquired through legitimate archaeological expeditions and trade agreements. Your ignorance of the law does not excuse your crimes, Admiral Webb replied. The artifacts you hold were taken from human settlements that were destroyed or abandoned during the century-long communications blackout that your species imposed upon humanity. We have documentation proving the origin of every item in your collection. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. If the humans were telling the truth, it suggested that the galaxy's major powers had somehow been involved in suppressing human expansion centuries ago. Director Quintel's crystalline form dimmed as she accessed her databases. I'm cross-referencing historical records. There are indeed gaps in our archives from approximately 3 to 4 centuries ago, periods when record-keeping was inconsistent due to various interspecies conflicts. Chancellor Vorthake's voice carried a note of growing alarm. Are you suggesting that humanity was a spacefaring civilization centuries before official first contact? Before anyone could answer, Commander Velshow's voice returned, now filled with genuine terror. They've taken control of our station's systems. Our computers are displaying images, ancient star maps showing human colonies throughout this entire sector. According to these records, humans had settlements on over 200 worlds before something called the suppression protocols were implemented. The transmission crackled with interference again, then cleared to reveal Admiral Webb's voice once more. Citizens of Kepler Station, what you are witnessing is the return of humanity to its rightful place in this galaxy. For 3 centuries, we have been rebuilding, preparing, and documenting the crimes committed against our people. The galaxy believed us extinct or primitive, but humanity endures. David Chen felt the blood drain from his face as pieces of a massive puzzle began falling into place. His government had told him that humanity was a young spacefaring species. But what if that was only partially true? What if humanity had been deliberately suppressed and forced to start over? The artifacts you call archaeological treasures are the remnants of our lost colonies, Admiral Webb continued. Each item represents lives cut short, dreams destroyed, and a civilization forced into exile. We are not invaders. We are survivors, and we have come to reclaim what was stolen from us. Commander Velshow's voice returned, barely audible over the background chaos. Admiral, our historical records show no evidence of suppression protocols or deliberate action against human colonies. If such events occurred, they would be documented in the Council archives. Your archives have been sanitized, Admiral Webb replied grimly. The species responsible for the Great Silence covered their tracks well. But humanity has long memories, and we have preserved the truth in places where your sensors could not reach. The chamber erupted into panicked discussions as delegates began frantically accessing their own historical databases, searching for any mention of ancient human colonies or suppression protocols. Director Quintel's form blazed with light as she processed vast amounts of data. I'm detecting significant anomalies in our historical archives. Large sections of data from the relevant time periods have been corrupted or deleted. The patterns suggest deliberate tampering. Chancellor Vorthake's massive form seemed to shrink as the weight of the revelations settled upon him. If humanity's claims are true, then the very foundation of our galactic civilization may be built upon a crime of unprecedented magnitude. The transmission from Kepler Station resumed, but now Commander Velshow's voice carried a note of resigned cooperation. Admiral Webb, we are complying with your demands. Our staff is gathering all items of human origin for transfer to your vessels. But I must ask, what happens to the galaxy now? If humanity was indeed suppressed, what are your intentions toward the species that may have been responsible? Admiral Webb's response sent chills through the assembled delegates. That, Commander, depends entirely on how quickly those species acknowledge their crimes and make appropriate reparations. Humanity is prepared to coexist peacefully with those who recognize our legitimate claims. But for those who persist in denying the truth or attempt to suppress us again, the transmission went silent for several long moments before Admiral Webb's voice returned, colder than the vacuum of space. For those species, we have prepared a different kind of justice. The galaxy will learn that humanity does not forgive easily, and we never forget. As the transmission from Kepler Station ended, Ambassador David Chun realized that his entire understanding of human history, galactic politics, and his own role as humanity's representative had just been shattered. The galaxy was about to discover that they had severely underestimated humanity, and based on the fear he could see in the eyes of every delegate around him, that discovery might come too late for some species to avoid the consequences of their ancestors' actions. Chancellor Vorthake's voice echoed through the silent chamber. This emergency session will continue until we determine the full scope of this crisis. All member species are hereby required to conduct immediate audits of their historical archives and artifact collections. But David Chun was no longer listening. He was desperately trying to establish contact with Earth, knowing that the answers he received might determine whether the galaxy faced a war that would dwarf anything in recorded history. The response from Earth arrived 18 hours later, delivered by a ship that materialized in Nexus Prime's orbital space without triggering a single early warning sensor. The vessel defied every design principle known to galactic shipbuilders. Its hull seemed to bend light around itself, creating an optical illusion that hurt to look at directly. Ambassador David Chun stood in the Council Chamber's communication center, his hands shaking as he opened the sealed message container that had been delivered by what the ship's pilot had called a diplomatic courier. The courier himself had been human, but, like the warriors described in Zextai's testimony, he moved with an unnatural confidence and carried technology that seemed more advanced than anything in the Council's arsenals. "Mr. Ambassador," Chancellor Vorthake said from behind him, "we need answers. The situation is deteriorating rapidly." David nodded grimly. In the past day, 17 more systems had gone dark, and refugee ships were arriving at council stations with increasingly terrifying accounts of human fleets demanding the return of stolen heritage items. Each encounter followed the same pattern: overwhelming technological superiority, demands for artifacts, and ominous warnings about species that had participated in something called the Great Suppression. With trembling fingers, David activated the message container. Instead of a traditional recording, a three-dimensional projection of an elderly human woman materialized in the chamber. She wore simple civilian clothing, but something in her bearing suggested immense authority. "Ambassador Chun," the projection began, "I am Dr. Elena Vasquez, Director of the Terran Heritage Recovery Project. What you are about to learn will fundamentally change your understanding of humanity's place in this galaxy." David felt his stomach clench as the projection continued. "The human government that appointed you as our representative was, until 48 hours ago, unaware of our existence. We are what remains of humanity's original galactic civilization, the survivors and descendants of those who escaped the systematic genocide that nearly wiped our species from the stars 3 centuries ago." The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of recording equipment as council representatives watched from the observation galleries. Earth's current government represents what we call the young colonies, worlds settled by humans who escaped the first wave of attacks and forgot their origins over generations of isolation. When you made first contact with the galaxy 18 months ago, you triggered ancient protocols that led those responsible for our exile to attempt another suppression. Dr. Vasquez's image gestured, and the projection expanded to show a star map covering thousands of light years. Red dots marked former human settlements, while blue dots showed current council space. At the height of our expansion, humanity controlled nearly 400 worlds across this galactic arm. We were not conquerors. We were explorers, traders, and scientists who believed in peaceful coexistence with alien species. That belief nearly led to our extinction. The star map changed, showing the red dots disappearing in waves over a period labeled the Great Suppression, 2387 to 2389 Standard Galactic. A coalition of species, led by the hegemony and supported by elements within what would become the Galactic Council, determined that humanity's rapid expansion posed a threat to their control of galactic trade routes. They implemented what they called the suppression protocols, a systematic campaign to destroy human colonies and eliminate our presence from known space. David's legs nearly gave out as the implications hit him. The galaxy's major powers hadn't just suppressed humanity. They had attempted genocide on an interstellar scale. 2 billion humans died in the first wave of attacks, Dr. Vasquez continued, her voice never wavering despite the magnitude of what she was revealing. Entire worlds were sterilized, their populations killed or enslaved. Our colonies were listed as archaeological sites of unknown origin in council databases, and our artifacts were distributed to museums throughout the galaxy as curiosities from a lost civilization. The projection showed images that made David's blood run cold. Human cities reduced to rubble, families fleeing in primitive spacecraft, children separated from their parents as entire populations were scattered across the outer rim. But humanity is resilient, Ambassador Chun. While the galaxy believed us extinct or reduced to primitive tribes, the survivors began rebuilding. We went deep underground, literally and figuratively. We established hidden colonies and systems that didn't appear on any galactic charts, developed technologies in secret, and, most importantly, we remembered. Dr. Vasquez's expression hardened. For 3 centuries, we have been preparing for this day. We've documented every crime, identified every perpetrator, and cataloged every stolen artifact. When your government made first contact with the galaxy, it gave us the pretext we needed to emerge from hiding and reclaim what was taken from us. The projection expanded again, this time showing massive shipyards hidden in stellar phenomena that would mask them from long-range sensors, inside nebulae, behind asteroid belts, even within the coronas of stars. The fleets you're encountering are not our entire military capability, Ambassador. They are mercy missions, designed to recover our stolen heritage and announce our return to galactic civilization. Every human vessel has orders to avoid unnecessary casualties and offer multiple opportunities for peaceful compliance. David found his voice. Dr. Vasquez, the Galactic Council is terrified. They're seeing capabilities that shouldn't be possible, ships that phase through matter, warriors immune to vacuum exposure, technology that makes their greatest achievements look primitive. The projection smiled sadly. 3 centuries of hiding taught us many things, Ambassador. When you're outnumbered 1,000 to 1, you must become more than your enemies ever imagined possible. Human engineering, freed from the constraints of galactic standardization and driven by the necessity of survival, has achieved things that species comfortable in their dominance never bothered to attempt. Dr. Vasquez gestured again, and the projection showed schematics of human technology that hurt David's mind to contemplate. We learned to manipulate matter at the quantum level, to fold space without the crude hyperspace drives the galaxy considers advanced. Our warriors were symbiotic armor that connects them directly to local reality matrices, allowing them to survive in environments that would kill unprotected beings. Our ships are grown rather than built, using biotechnology that thinks and adapts faster than any computer the galaxy has ever constructed. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just survived the attempted genocide. They had used their exile to become something far more advanced than their former oppressors. But, Ambassador, Dr. Vasquez continued, we are not here for revenge, despite what we have suffered. We are here for justice. Species that acknowledge their role in the Great Suppression and make appropriate reparations will find humanity willing to forgive. Those that deny their crimes or attempt to suppress us again will face consequences proportional to their actions. David swallowed hard. What kind of consequences? The projection's expression became grave. The same kind that were inflicted upon us, Ambassador. Isolation from galactic civilization, the loss of their interstellar infrastructure, and exile to whatever worlds we deem appropriate for their continued existence. The message continued for another 20 minutes, outlining humanity's demands and timeline for compliance. They wanted recognition of the genocide, return of all stolen artifacts, reparations for the lost colonies, and guarantees that no species would ever again attempt to suppress human expansion. As the projection ended, David realized that the galaxy's entire power structure was about to be overturned. The species that had ruled for centuries were about to discover that their victims had not only survived but had become their superiors in every meaningful way. Chancellor Vorthe K approached the communications center, his massive form seeming smaller than usual. Ambassador Chen, what is Earth's official position on these revelations? David turned to face the Chancellor, his mind reeling from everything he had learned. Sir, I believe Earth will need to coordinate our response with the Heritage Recovery Project. We may have been separate for 3 centuries, but we're still the same species. The Chancellor's compound eyes showed an expression David had never seen before, genuine fear. Then, the galaxy must prepare for the return of humanity, Vorthe said quietly, and pray that they prove more merciful than we were to them. Over the next several hours, the scope of humanity's return became clear. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy as human fleets revealed themselves at hundreds of locations simultaneously. Ancient human ruins on dozens of worlds suddenly came alive with activity as hidden installations emerged from centuries of concealment. But most shocking of all were the responses from species leaders as they discovered evidence of the Great Suppression in their own archives. Archives that had been deliberately hidden from their current populations but preserved in military and intelligence databases that few knew existed. The hegemony's supreme admiral transmitted an unconditional surrender within 6 hours of receiving humanity's demands. The Vegan Confederacy followed 12 hours later, along with formal apologies for their ancestors' actions. But not every species chose compliance. The Krillian Empire, the Andromeda Federation, and several smaller powers declared that they would not bow to human demands, regardless of historical claims. Those species discovered what 3 centuries of preparation had allowed humanity to achieve. Their military fleets simply vanished, not destroyed, but somehow translated to a region of space far from any inhabited systems, left with enough supplies to survive, but no way to return to their home worlds. Their planets remained untouched, their populations unharmed, but their ability to project power beyond their own systems was permanently severed. It was a demonstration of capability that made every remaining resistance movement reconsider their position. As David Chun watched the galaxy reshape itself around humanity's return, he realized that Zextai's testimony had only scratched the surface of the truth. Humanity wasn't just back. They had returned as the most advanced civilization the galaxy had ever seen, tempered by centuries of suffering and driven by an absolute determination to ensure that genocide would never again be tolerated among the stars. The age of human exile was over. The age of human supremacy had begun. And for those species wise enough to choose cooperation over confrontation, it promised to be an age of unprecedented peace, prosperity, and technological advancement. But for those who had participated in the Great Suppression and refused to acknowledge their crimes, it would be an age of carefully calculated justice that would serve as a permanent reminder to the galaxy of the consequences of attempting genocide against humanity. The survivor had been right to shake with fear. But, as David was beginning to understand, humanity's return represented not just power, but the kind of moral authority that could only be earned through surviving the unthinkable and choosing justice over vengeance. The galaxy would never be the same. And, perhaps, David thought as he prepared to coordinate Earth's integration with the Heritage Recovery Project, that was exactly what the universe needed.